everyone, this is Hulkzilla here, and today I want to talk about a few things regarding Marvel Rivals. It's been honestly an entire year now, and I think this game has honestly been doing great. I don't really think I think competitive wise though, the game hasn't been doing very great lately, and there's a number of reasons for that, which I'll get into shortly. So, but without further ado, let's just get right into it. The reason why I think competitive will be a bit interesting this season is because as far as every season has gone so far for Marvel Rivals, whenever a new character is released, of course, everyone has to play the new character. Like, for example, when Blade was like the new character, everybody just wanted to play Blade. Didn't matter if they were really good at him, it didn't matter if they were bad, they just had to play him no matter what. And of course, people that played competitive would just play him regardless of whether they were doing bad with him or good with him, and it of course leads to a lot of bad situations, whether your team ends up winning or losing. If you're losing, that's kind of bad, and the player will of course refuse to swap because, well, it's the new player, guys, I gotta play him, and having that mentality is of course not very cohesive to a competitive environment. But if your team's winning, then great. It doesn't really matter. First things first, of course, as a lot of people know, Deadpool is of course coming to the game, and he's going to be released around January 16th, which I think is great and amazing. I think it'll be great for quick play and free fight. As far as competitive goes, I think it's definitely going to be a bit interesting, and I will kind of just put it at that. And you could of course use any other character that's been introduced into the game as another example. I just happen to use Blade as one because I noticed it in the past when I had competitive games and I saw that Blade was the new character. People would immediately jump on him, and it was either you had a really good Blade player and your team would just win regardless of whether they were good or bad with him, or you ended up having one that didn't really know how to play him well and your team kind of struggled and lost the game because of that, which can get kind of annoying. I think though for Deadpool's case, I think competitive will be a bit more annoying, mainly because Deadpool is definitely one of the more popular characters in Marvel, and I know Deadpool just has like a huge fan base when it comes to the character itself, and I know people are probably just going to live or die by him, by choosing him, and I don't think it'll matter if it's competitive or free play or free fight. They will just pretty much just put their foot down and just say, nope, I'm playing this character no matter what. And I think this is of course going to be a huge issue for competitive. But then again, you always have situations where you have a player that wants to play one or two characters, and if someone says, hey man, I think you should swap to something else, they'll just pretty much just go Black Widow and pretty much just throw the game. And that of course can be applied to any player or any one that wants to play a certain character, and things just don't go their way, so they of course have to throw a fit, or they just have to swap to a character that's useless and just throw the game because they're just not mentally in a state of mind where they are flexible or adaptable to the situation, or are only used to playing one or two characters. The next issue, I think, is mainly the balance of the game itself, or more specifically, the idea of like how choosing a certain character is the difference between you winning or losing a game in Marvel Rivals. Mainly because yeah, like, it exists. Like, there are characters that are just completely superior to other characters in the game. Like, Invisible Woman, Gambit are just way better healers than, like, Mantis or Adam Warlock. Daredevil and Phoenix are just superior DPS characters to, like, Blade or, like, uh, Iron Fist. Even though, like, Iron Fist is a good DPS, like, they're just clearly better and superior to them. Like, you picking a certain character automatically determines whether you may win or lose a game, which I think is one of the biggest issues for this game right now, because I feel like the problem is a lot of players realize that there are broken characters in this game and will get carried to a high rank simply just based off of their character pick alone. And when they eventually run into a situation where there are actual just better players they just run into or whatever, they end up folding and end up pretty much not being able to do anything because they're not necessarily skilled or good at the game. They're just carried by the fact that they just know how to play one or two really good characters. Let's take Cloak and Dagger, for example. Now, Cloak and Dagger is obviously not like the best healer in the game. As I've already mentioned, Gambit and Invisible Woman are obviously the best right now. But Cloak and Dagger is honestly a really good healer, though. Like, Cloak and Dagger can swap between being DPS to healer, and overall, they probably have the best healing ult in the game. And the thing about playing Cloak and Dagger is that it's good until you get to a point where you eventually play against competent players that are just able to play around your team or are just able to play around you. Like, let's say this is a scenario. You're a player that just only plays Cloak and Dagger and maybe like one or two other healers. You run into a Magneto player that literally just eliminates you every time you ult, because Magneto's ult is just really good and he eliminates you every time you use your ult. So he's essentially hard countering you. So this is a situation that you should probably swap to another healer. So you might be able to play one or two other characters on the side, but you're not really predominantly good at them. And this is kind of a bad situation, because now you're going to have to play a character you don't really have a lot of experience with, and you pretty much end up throwing the game because you only know how to play that one character and you live and die by that one character. Now, I'm not saying playing Cloak and Dagger is necessarily bad in a lot of situations, but if your only contribution is being able to just play that one character, you're more than likely going to lose most of your games, because being able to play one character will not guarantee that you will climb. Like, you have to be able to swap to the team comp that the enemy team is trying to counter. If you are playing Hulk and you are playing into a Penny, Emma Frost, Winter Soldier, and a Phoenix, you have to swap off of Hulk. It's just that simple. Hulk is a character that just completely gets hard countered by a dive. You cannot play Hulk or another dive tank like Venom into that comp. You have to swap to a shield tank like Magneto or Strange, because if you don't, your team will lose. You will lose the team fight for everyone, and that will pretty much just be the game right there sentence. To me, I feel like Marvel Rivals is kind of running into the League of Legends problem where, yeah, essentially you picking and choosing a certain character automatically already determines whether or not you win or lose the game. And, that's kind of why there's a lot of counter picking in LoL. There's a lot of ideas around how using certain items, but that's a totally completely game. But the main point is that counter picking is one of the biggest reasons for winning or losing a game of League of Legends. It's the same thing with Marvel Rivals. The only difference is Marvel Rivals actually gives you the option to swap off of whatever you're playing and actually counter whatever the enemy team comp is playing, which I think is kind of a good thing and also a bad thing. But it's also a bad thing mainly because automatically you either win or lose depending on whether you know how to play a certain character or not. And, you know, again, like, the problem is, Marvel Rivals is just including so many characters at this point that it's literally just going to be impossible for them to literally balance every character. I mean, for goodness sakes, like, Invisible Woman has been like one of the most broken characters since like season 1. And only recently are people realizing that, and she's like now going to get nerfed by the next season. The other issue I think regarding competitive in Marvel Rivals is the whole surrendering issue. A lot of players recently are either just choosing to either not play the game or simply just give up because they just don't want to play into the team comp the enemy team is playing, or they just simply are just getting diff and simply are just saying, you know what, no, I just don't want to play this game right now, and I think we should just quit. This is, of course, a very big issue, and I think this is again perpetuated by the character balance in this game, mainly because, yeah, a lot of characters are just better than others, and if a player is playing something that completely counters or completely is just superior to whatever character you're playing, then you will probably not want to play the game. And if you're not able to be flexible and switch off of the character you're playing, you're probably just going to want to surrender. Let's take this situation, for example. You have a really good Spider-Man player, and your team ends up doing really good. The Spider-Man is getting really good picks. Everyone on your team is doing well. You're all getting good team fights, and you're all doing well overall. Now, this is where the situation comes into light. Let's say the enemy team realizes your Spider-Man is now the enemy threat. So they swap to an anti-dive team comp. They play Namor, they play Bucky, they play Rocket, and, whatever anti-dive character. And your Spider-Man gets completely shut out. Your team struggles for that. And the Spider-Man player refuses to swap off. And at some point during the first part of the game, the Spider-Man opens the option for surrender. And this right there is probably just one of the biggest examples for why I think surrendering is an issue in this game, because there are a lot of players that do similar things like this. I've had a lot of games where a player wanted to play Mantis, but unfortunately the team comp was just really not doing well with that, since the enemy team had a lot of damage output and we were just really struggling, and we needed the player to swap off of Mantis. But instead, the guy simply just decided to play Black Widow and opened the suggestion for surrender. Personally, I think the surrendering option is good only in a situation where your team knows they're getting shut out and there's just nothing you can, you've at least tried to counter the enemy comp, but unfortunately your team is just not as good as theirs. So yeah, I mean, surrendering is of course a good option because you lose less points that way, and it's just good because, you move on to the next game, because unfortunately there's just no way for your team to win because unfortunately you just tried everything and it's just not working. So that's understandable. It's not understandable when you're in a situation where your team can actually win and one player on the team simply just refuses to swap off or just doesn't want to play the game because they either know only how to play one character, or they just don't want to play any other character other than that one character. And I know I'm bringing this up again, but I think this is kind of why Deadpool is going to be a big issue for competitive in the next season that is coming up. So overall, the main issues that I've discussed mainly cater towards the competitive scene of Marvel Rivals. And it is unfortunately very imbalanced depending on the character you play, the map you play on, and just overall the mental state of either you or your teammates, which just gets perpetuated by either character imbalance or the map you play on or the personality of whoever you're playing with. These, of course, are a lot of issues that I feel like can be addressed and should be addressed, but unfortunately, I think the character imbalance is something that will eventually just get to a point where it just really can't be, because unfortunately Marvel Rivals just has a lot of characters right now that are either just good to use or bad to use, and you can make all the buffs you want to a certain character, but you know, eventually if the character doesn't get like a super big buff or if the character just gets like a complete rework or something that just makes them absolutely good and needed to play, then yeah, no one's just really going to play that character. I mean, Black Panther is literally the worst character to play, unironically, even though he used to be like one of the best characters to play in the game, because yeah, Invisible Woman exists and Rocket just runs away from him, so BP is just kind of useless and unfortunately just doesn't do what other DPS characters do. So yeah, that's just an issue. But in terms of quick play and the other game modes, I think they've all been great, and I think they've made the game really fun and cool. Like, I really like the Ultron game mode, I like the Zombies one, I like the Clone one. Like, yeah, those are all really fun and great game modes that I think really make the game fun to play. I just mainly am just picking on the competitive scene of this game because that seems to be one of the big takes or the big things for Marvel Rivals right now, other than its other fun and interesting game modes. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and you know, I'm just hoping that Marvel Rivals can at least fix some of these problems, and you know, I'm just kind of hoping that certain characters get like big buffs, because yeah, I mean, Hulk right now is just kind of bad, BP is kind of bad, and there's a few others that are just really not good, and there's just other characters that are just superior to others. And you know, hopefully Marvel Rivals does something to fix that, but who knows, we'll see. Anyways, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.